All right, I've gotten a lot of questions about fire stuff, so I figured we'll clarify a bit about the builds and everything at the moment, and you guys can let me know if you have any questions. So here's like the little spreadsheet I have of what I want to talk about so far. So at the moment, first question is probably going to be, when do you living bomb? Normally people are living bombing, or like in a sim, technically you would living bomb at 5 target plus before you combust your SKB. So if you're not in combust, then you would do it, right? So you'd like living bomb, meteor, scorch, fire blast, combust, right? That's a pretty common opener. Or you're about to enter SKB and you're not currently in combust, you would living bomb, start hard casting your Flamestrike or pyroblast. And this is not really something you have to worry about unless you are in a situation like, the Dragons in Galgon's Fall, where there's just 5 million small little, I don't know what they are, oil ads or whatever. Then it's a great thing to do for your damage, but otherwise it's kind of meh. And then also, in case people are wondering about your pyroblasting versus flame striking, technically you're supposed to hard cast your SKB with flame strike at 3 target, and then anything above 3 target is a hot streak on your flame strike, but it's only 1% loss, just pyro ignite spread. So a lot of times people just pyro ignite spread even at 4 targets just for the priority damage. And then we're going to get into these talent builds, but kind of general recommendations is running these talent builds at these key levels, right? So 0 to 18, there's literally no chance in hell that you can run ignite. So you're just playing Flamestrike. Flamestrike really likes haste first, doesn't have much use for crit or anything. We'll get into that maybe in a bit. For 18 to 23, there's a hybrid build that Zamaros made in the Mage Discord, which is quite good. It's kind of designed for you to be able to either flame strike, but also kind of mostly ignite spread. So at these key levels where you're able to do a bit of ignite spreading, but you also need to flame strike to kill some mobs, like if we're talking about I don't want to say Dark Heart Thicket because that's a really good ignite key, but Dark Heart Thicket, if you're thinking about like the little bloods, right, you could just flame strike there even if you were to play ignite the rest of the time. And your threshold for flame strike here would be different, but we'll talk about that when we get to the talents. And then in like anything over 23, I would just always run ignite. Ignite is very good. It does great AoE damage. Mainly you're taking it for the priority damage. It's quite competitive. It's also a lot of fun in my opinion. So yeah, that's kind of the breakdown for that. Trinkets, really we're looking for Balefire as an on use. If you want to use a different on use, ashes I suppose is okay. Normally what I've found when I've tried using ashes in M+ is there's times where it's not up that I wish it was up, where Balefire would be, right? But Balefire doesn't traditionally line up exceptionally well with Combust, but when you have downtime and weird things affecting it, having your trinket up at 30 seconds sooner could really impact your damage. Also, as mastery on it, which when we talk about our prio for like stats for ignite, you notice I didn't mention mastery. We normally don't go out of our way to get mastery just because it's a pretty bad single target stat, but it is very, very strong, essentially king for ignite and AoE. So any kind of incidental mastery you get is actually good because we don't want to go out of our way to get it really. Most of the mastery we get is going to be from our crit, which is kind of a double dipping effect, right? Because we get crit for single target, which is really good for us because of our tier set and the fact that we don't have any guaranteed crit effects, right? This is your ignite build kind of. We're not taking Alshaz's Fury, so, but again, we'll get into that in a second. So you kind of go crit for that conversion into mastery and also just to have it outside Combust. But getting incidental mastery from Balefire is pretty nice. Your second trinket tends to be a Bellerillos, a Pips, a Venusaur, an Augury. Of these, I think Pips is probably the best passive you can get. It has a lot of value for Ignite. If you're not playing Ignite, then I would probably not play Pips. Bellerillos is really, really strong, just does a lot of damage to you. You have to be in melee, not ideal. Venusaur is really easy to get. For Flamestrike, I think C-Star is pretty decent. Gives you Verse, which we like as Flamestrike, and the Int proc is nothing to scoff at. So, and then Augury is just another option, but it doesn't really shine in AOE. It's more of a shines more in single target. So, okay, let's start talking about the builds. So, to clarify, If we're looking at like Ignite from a Mage scored standpoint, so like the people that theorycraft this stuff, this is the Ignite build they recommend. Okay, and that's fine. This is good. This is great on a like sustained situation. It's really, really good. And this is a float point that you can kind of put anywhere you want, mainly just between Master Flame, Intensifying Flame, and Firestarter. If you're pulling small, you don't really need Master Flame, in which case Intensifying Flame or Firestarter is going to be really good for you. But yeah, the issue with this build that I've found, and I think a lot of other people have found, because I'm going to show you like the meta Ignite build at the moment, is you don't really have the combust time to spend all your Phoenix Flames. And sure, you can send them in your filler, and it's like a little bit of a gain to send them in your filler, but is that really worth it to just gain into combust and actually just combusting? So most people are kind of avoiding this because the Master Flame, Intensifying Flame, and Firestarter are actually 3 really, really good talents that we're not taking all of in this build. So the meta Ignite build is this. Again, this is a little bit contrary to what, you know, the Sims are going with, and there's a couple reasons for that. You know, when we're looking at like AoE damage, you're looking at like a 5-target 5-minute sim for fire, which is gonna not be exceptionally great for Firestarter, where Firestarter's main value in Mythic Plus comes from the fact that you're entering pools with 5-6 stacks of SKB and you don't have Combust ready. And this just quickly lets you get into SKB for a pack that's going to live for like 30 seconds, right? And this happens over and over and over in a key. That's insanely valuable. Inside Flame, this is kind of directly proportional to the amount of time you spend in this situation. But this talent is disgusting, and the tooltip's not updated. It's actually 25% of the damage. This thing will be like 5 to 6% of your single target damage, and then it will be like 8% if you're actually doing 3-target cleave, like the first boss of Darkheart Thicket. This thing does like 8% of your damage. It just chunks, absolutely chunks. As for Master Flame, whether or not you need it, it's just really nice. A lot of people are doing large pulls. Having Fire Blast spread your Ignite to 2 additional nearby targets just makes it so you're spreading it to 5 targets when you're in Combust per Fire Blast. And when you're not super flush on Fire Blast, this is really, really good for making sure you're getting your big Ignites out quickly, essentially. So this is the Ignite build I would recommend. It's the one I've been running. It's the one that most people are running, I think, from looking at the meta stuff, like Hopeful running it. I think Arxis running it. I'm Fired Up was running it, but Hopeful gave him that. So it does seem to be what people are just landing on after playing the game. So take that how you will. Next, I want to talk about Flamestrike. So this is the full Flamestrike build. Some difference is from the Ignite build is we're taking Alexstrasza's Fury and we're pathing down to Phoenix Reborn. This is playing pretty similar, I guess, to last tier, where you're kind of just chunking out or throwing out a bunch of like Phoenix Flames for crits in your filler, just to guarantee you back into that SKB. And then once you get into SKB, you're just spending your Flame Strikes, and you're very rarely Ignite spreading, right? We kind of got already covered when you would Ignite spread in this build. It's like 3 target or less. So yeah, this is just great upfront damage, but it's nothing special, really. Like, yeah, it's whatever. So yeah, and then to kind of blend these two builds, I kind of already mentioned this, but like Zalmer has made this build where you have the ability to Flamestrike, but also you're kind of intended to spend most of your time doing Ignite. If you look at it in terms of when you're supposed to start Flamestriking with this build, the reason we Ignite isn't really for overall damage. We do Ignite because dealing damage to priority targets, like say your one mob has 15 million health, the rest have 10 million health. If we just Flamestrike, they're all dying evenly, and then you're left with one mob alive with 5 million health, right? If you Ignite, the goal is then that target that 5 million health dies at the same time as the ones that 10 million health, which is just net time save when you're looking at Mythic Plus. So in this build, it recognizes the fact that not every pack has, a mob with 5 million more HP. So here you're actually given the ability to Flamestrike if you need to. Say you're, again, pulling like all the little bloods and DHT without pulling the water elemental, blood elemental. In that case, you can just Flamestrike them and you'll still be able to do good damage there. But on all the other packs, you could just Ignite. So for this one, they really like doing floating talent points because it kind of depends on the situation. this is your floating talent point. You know, you can throw it into Firestarter if you're, say, going into Galakron's Fall, which you should always have Firestarter in Galakron's Fall. You put in Intensifying Flame if you really like it. The recommend one is Inflame. Inflame's just, you know, pretty decent cleave talent, but I think it kind of falls flat when you're looking at some of the other choices. But for this build, I think Inflame fits very well. And then whether or not, when you start Flamestriking again, it's kind of just depending on your situation. It's also depending on your stats, right? Because when you're going to Flamestrike, Ignite, Hybrid, suddenly your stats look weird as hell, right? Because you got Haste first for Flamestrike, or like crit Haste for Ignite, and maybe you have more Mastery when you're playing Ignite too, and you're like, excuse me, when am I supposed to start Flamestriking? If you have more Mastery, you delay your Flamestriking till later. If you have less Mastery, you just do it at the normal time, which is 4. So, but really it should depend on your situation when you're running this. And again, this is kind of recommended for like an 18 to 23 level, just to give you the flexibility where majority of the time you're pressing Ignite, other times you're pressing Flamestrike. Okay, hopefully that covered the majority of people's questions. I'm now going to do like a bit of a gameplay sample just for the Ignite and Flamestrike build, so you kind of know how you're playing the game. And yeah, for embellishments, by the way, I would recommend, if you're mainly looking at Mythic Plus, just do 2 times Blizzard Line for both. Flamestrike might prefer Osweave, I don't know, but your eventual goal is to Ignite, and 2 times Blizzard Lining is disgusting in Mythic Plus for every Mage spec. It's just a little bit worse in Raid if you get lower uptime, so. Okay, let's look at an example of opening on Ignite in a new pack in a key, just so you can see what you're doing. So when you're running up, first of all, you want to target the biggest health guy, right? This guy's beefy. He's got 30 million HP. These guys all have like 10. Now, since I know this is a 28, I am going to do some Firestarter build, you know? We're also going to double less, which makes it easier for me to stack my Firestarter a little bit. And we're going to see that this target is about to go out of my Firestarter window. So here I'm going to combust, and you can see I actually pressed my Living Bomb. Like, I know that he was about to go on my Firestarter, so I started doing my pre-combustion, right, which is Living Bomb. Technically, you probably wouldn't Balefire before combust here, but I did it anyway. And I'm just going to combust during, and then I Meteor. And we're just casting our SKB, right? And then here, you know, I'm at 100% haste. I'm just kind of throwing my PFs and Fire Blast and using my Fireball to ensure I'm not overcapping on, or I'm not running out of Fire Blast. Yeah, and then the mobs die. And you can see I'm a bit used to Fort, so given that these mobs are still alive and my combust is still up, you know, I probably could combust a little bit earlier. That's fine. Now I have my SKB for the next pack, so I'm probably going to Living Bomb this. Yep, I said Living Bomb that guy. I go into my SKB, right? And this guy actually it's really far away from me, but if I didn't have SKB there, I actually would have done a Firestar build up, which I don't know if we can see that later on. So like here, you can see I'm at 7 SKB stacks. So this is where Firestar is really nice because it guarantees the fact that I may have 8. This is slowed down, by the way. So now we have Fireball into a Pyroblast. And I do Living Bomb here, right? It's more than 5 targets, so it's good to Living Bomb. And then I'm going to enter my SKP, and then we're just going to throw down a Meteor. Pretty standard stuff, And that's really it. Right? And then you just enter Combust. I didn't decide to Living Bomb here. Didn't have much value for me to. And it's better for me to get into Combustion since these mobs, you know, aren't especially going to last very long. So if I were to delay my combustion a little bit, I might not have full value on it. And you're going to see actually that, you know, like these mobs are dying just as my combust is ending. And I don't really want to SKB these. So maybe I could have Living Bombed, but not too large of a deal. Give you a boss example. This is one of the best Ignite bosses in the game. You can see I start this with 5 SKB stacks. So because of Firestarter, I'm easily able to build 8. I can just go straight into my Combust, which, by the way, just to mention, if you're ever in this scenario, you actually want to Balefire before your SKB hardcast into Combust. If you're not doing SKB hardcast in Combust, you just use it during Combust. Here it actually came up like during my cast, so it's kind of fine. But yeah. Anyway, so that was the opener. You just build to 8 ideally, and that's pretty easily done on most tyrannical bosses at the moment. Then you just do your single target build. Fire is especially good for this boss because your Ignite can hit the Strangling Roots when no one else can. Though you can just freedom them. Yeah, that was interesting. But yeah, you can see Ignite, nothing special, and it's really just your single target build too, right? So you're just chilling, doing single target damage, and because you have high crit, it's pretty easy for you to get into your combust. Here, I'm not going to Fire Blast because there's no benefit to me Fire Blasting right now. Given my combust CD, it's actually better I get SKB later, and I'm not going to overcap my Fire Blast charges. So if I just keep fireballing and trying to like natural get hot streaks, then odds are I'll be able to SKB into combust, right? So that's what I'm doing here. So here, I Fire Blast for 2 reasons. One, I was getting close to overcapping my Fire Blast and getting to 3 charges. And 2, I'm close enough now that I can SKB into combust, right? All right, let's look at an example of Flamestrike. So with Flamestrike, you have Alexstrasza's Fury, so your Phoenix Flames, your Dragon's Breath gives you heat up. So you would rather not use those in Combustion or SKB unless you're going to overcap on them. So if you're in like if you start a Combust, essentially, you're good to use Phoenix Flames. If you're in an isolated SKB and you got like 4 seconds left, don't Phoenix Flames. Save that for outside of your Combust. But I'll give you an example. It also makes it nice for your opener because your opener can then be a Phoenix Flames to get heat up, and then you just Meteor, Scorch, Fire Blast, Combust, into double Flamestrike. Just to mention with Ignite, when we're doing our SKB hardcast, if we have a heating up, for instance, right, so we're hardcasting Pyro, we have a heating up, we convert that to a hot streak and then just double Pyro Blast. You can't do that as Flamestrike, like you can't do that with Flamestrike off an SKB hardcast, so you have to wait, and you'll see that shown later. You can see here, I'm going to Phoenix Flames, I'm in a really long combust, right, because I just start combust, I'm going to do a SKB afterwards, so here, right here, I cannot Fire Blast, right? Whereas with Ignite, you would normally be Fire Blasting to make this hot streak, and then you would Pyro. In this case, you actually can't Fire Blast Flamestrike. Flamestrike generates its heat ups instantly. So if you were to try and do this, you would just munch a heat up. So instead, what you normally do is you wait for the Flamestrike cast to finish, then you Flamestrike again, and then you Fire Blast Flamestrike, right? So I hardcast Flamestrike, I cast Flamestrike from the hot streak that gave me, and then I Flamestriked, or Fireblast Flamestriked again, right? So, yeah. Here I'm just gonna Shifting Power, so it's kind of fine that I use my Phoenix Flames. I have not played Fire in a long time, or sorry, Flamestrike in a pretty long time, so this should have been a Dragon's Breath, really, but I forgot about that until later. But 2 Phoenix Flames is fine here, because I'm going to enter an SKB that's isolated, right? So I don't even want to use Phoenix Flames inside this SKB. So yeah, again, same situation, so I'm going to let this go off. Here, I am in Combust. I have Meteor up. I would like to press Meteor. I'm going to delay Meteor a GCD, and the reason for that is I want to refresh my field of burn. So I'm going to Fire Blast, and then I could Meteor if I want to, but I'm still going to probably Flamestrike first, but it doesn't really matter. There you go. So I just Meteor after I refresh my field of burn. And instead of using that Phoenix Flames, I Scorch, Fire Blast, double Flamestrike, right? And your filler is still Fireball as Flamestrike. that should give you a pretty good idea of how we're playing this, right? And then your filler, you're spamming stuff, and you're kind of just really sad, and you wish you were an SKB. But here, we're going to get into our combust, right? So since I have SKB, similar to like with Ignite, you're going to just hardcast your Flamestrike and then Ignite, or sorry, combust at the end. And then since this is going to give me a hot streak when my Flamestrike finishes, I have two options. I can either Scorch and do double Flamestrike, or I have to Flamestrike, Fireblast, Flamestrike like before. So let's see. You see I do Scorch, double Flamestrike, refresh my Field of Burn, and then Meteor. I'm fine to use Phoenix Flames because this is a long combust. And yeah, like this gives you a pretty good idea of how to play Flamestrike in AoE. Normally, I actually often try and have my DB on CD before I shifting power as Flamestrike. Just it's really nice with Alshor's Fury. And there I used Phoenix Flames because I was going to overcap. You can see like how short the distance between your two SKVs is if you're playing Alshor's Fury well. This character does have a 41% crit, so. Here my field burn's gonna fall off, and that's kind of okay. I definitely could sequence that a little bit differently if I wanted to have it not fall off, but since I can't double Flamestrike during that SKB hardcast, it's just an unfortunate reality that happens sometimes. Yeah, personally, I don't mind Flamestriking. It's just you lose like a lot of single target to do it, so anytime Ignite can creep back up, it does, and it becomes quite strong, as you've probably seen in the meta. And then just to cover, because I think there's always some confusion about how you're playing Combust. If you have Fire Blast, always good to use it unless you need to save it. Like for instance, you barely have one charge of Fire Blast, then you would do a Scorch. But we'll talk about that. So Fire Blast, use that to convert your heat up into a hot streak. Otherwise, it's kind of just Phoenix Flames or Scorch, and you just replace Scorch with Fireball when you have over 100% haste, because Scorch casts below the GCD and Fireball just does way more damage. So at that point, it just becomes a bit better. Normally, we're using like that Scorch Fireball or Fireball for resource conservation. Like, hey, I'm running out of Fire Blast. I'm not going to be able to upkeep my Field of Burn in like 3 seconds. So you're like, fuck, all right, let's just Scorch Pyro, right? Cast your SKB hardcast ASAP. Doesn't matter. You're in Combust, throw them out there. Normally when we're doing like a Scorch or SKB hardcast or a Fireball cast, we actually do a double Pyro. So how that works is we have a heat up because we're in Combust, so everything we do crits, so you're not going to not have a heat up. So you're going to Scorch and Fire Blast. So now you have a hot streak during your Scorch cast. You cue a Pyro Blast, and then that Pyro Blast and the Scorch you cast hit the target and give you another hot streak, and they Pyro again. So, for instance, the way this generally looks like is, so you're going to Scorch, Fire Blast, Pyro, Pyro. And you're just spamming your Pyro Blast button. You can kind of see that's exactly what I did. That's also kind of a common way to enter Combust, if you didn't notice from before. So, and that's really like the bread and butter of your Combust. I think Combust is pretty easy to pick up, right? You just need to be aware of what you can press, right? I mean, you can easily tell, and kind of the VODs I've shown you of when I'm scorching is mostly for like research conservation. Of course, once you get into like extra lust haste stuff, you get a little thrown out of whack on terms of like your understanding of where your procs are from your muscle memory. But the thing that tends to trip people up is that off GCD action of Fire Blast, they tend to like maybe Fire Blast before they shoot their Fire Blast, which is something you want to fix. The big thing, if this doesn't work for you, is you probably change your spell queue window. So just Google that and put that in your chat console. And if it's not 400, change it to 400 because someone lied to you. But yeah, this is very easy. It's also bread and butter for fire.